to the cloud. Properties of the cross product to calculate I cross K cross K cross J. All right. So the properties that are coming into play here are really just the concept of, well, it's two or threefold depending on how you look at it. You could look at it as like, all right, well, I want to work with the left side first and then the right side, or the right side then the left side, which would make it a form of the commutative property in the sense that you're choosing which part you want to work with, but it's PEMDAS basically, all right? As far as any other properties are concerned, it really is just a matter of kind of seeing where the first step takes us in making a determination of where we would go from there, all right? So let's focus on I cross K. So I cross K is going to be some kind, I say it this way for a reason, it's going to be some kind of J, meaning it's either going to be positive or negative. So it's just a question of whether it's coming out of the paper towards us or it's going into the paper away from us, all right? Well, it's J, so it'd be to the left or to the right, but it's still the same idea, right? It's direction, right? So I'm going to draw a quick sketch. I'll do a little bit better than that. For whatever reason, it just doesn't want to draw a straight line. I don't know why. I would freehand it. I'm like, forget the line draw tool if it's not going to lock into place the right way. So here's the x-axis, the y-axis, the z-axis. And I'll put I here. Here's K. It's just a question of what direction J is going to take on, right? So our possibilities are that it could go this way, or it could go this way. Right, and so that's where that whole right-hand rule comes into play, because we could compute this, and honestly, it's really not too crazy. I mean, this is really more for informational purposes, because technically you could just pop it into GeoGebra and get the answer. It's really just more of the idea of trying to get an understanding of, why it works the way it does. All right, so what you would have to do is place, again, your index finger along the first vector, which would be the I vector, and your middle finger along the second vector, which would be the K vector, right? So it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but you'd have to sort of just kind of play it out logically where, like, am I moving the paper or am I moving my hands? But you would have to place your fingers in such a way that the thumb would be pointing along the y-axis appropriately. All right, so let me see if I can actually do it with the diagram here, and maybe that'll kind of get the idea across. I don't know that it's gonna happen, because I wanted to just do the reflection of it, but it's not gonna let me. It's not gonna let me do it. All right. Well, what we could do. We could do it backwards, and then you'll see that it'll be the opposite of what we want. How about that? That's something. All right. So here's my right hand. So I'd have A going along the K vector. So I'm doing it backwards. All right. So the A value, the index finger is going along K, and you just got to kind of imagine that the B vector is contorting so that it's going along this vector here. You see, it's obviously a whole lot easier if I have I and j, I and some form of j, but not the case here. All right, so this is telling me that the car is killing me. This is telling me that the resulting vector, if I have my index finger going along k, the resulting vector should be going in the positive j direction. So that tells me that what I'm really dealing with is the opposite of that. All right, so that would be it. It would just be a matter of saying, okay, well, it's the opposite of what I would think, you know, and then that would be the end of it. So, yeah, there was a way that I could implant myself into the screen, you know, to go in Tron style. That would be the way to do it. But this is going to give us a negative j. All right. So hand waving doesn't always get the job done. If I know from experience as a student, it was like, okay, yeah, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, dude. So it wasn't always a dude. But that's the idea. So what I'll do is I'll get the vector I, and I'll do it in a three-dimensional system, just making sure that I'm in the three-dimensional system, because it kind of disappeared on me there for a second. All right. And, you know, doing it on the app is a little iffy. It is what it is. So 100. We've seen enough examples of just how iffy it is on the app. So we know that, you know, buckle up and get ready, because this is going to probably take a minute. I'm just going to kind of zoom it out a little bit. And so this is the fun part. Vector, see. My issue is the pop-up screen. I'm going to just try to do full screen here, just because when it I just don't know if people don't realize that there's a difference between not having a muffler and a racing muffler. Or maybe they do realize it. Like, because this individual thinks that he's fooling people with his fake muffler, his fake racing muffler, which is just basically like, I don't even know.
It makes a weird noise, right?
Yeah, it's like it sounds unhealthy. It's an unhealthy muffler. Like it doesn't sound like that crisp, you're at the racetrack sound. Like it's like you're not fooling anyone.
Mm-hmm.
They try anyway. All right, I finally got something to show up here, vector A. So now I'll just duplicate it, and then just hopefully that'll allow me to just swap it out for a B. All right, so I want to zoom in like a lot without it moving too much on me, and it's moving too much on me. Oh, yeah, I hate this thing. Honestly, the GeoGebra part of it isn't the issue. It's the fact that it's not a user-friendly app. Let me just hit home. All right, that I could have done a little sooner. That one's on me. All right, so anyway, at long last, I finally got that going. So we want the cross product. So it's really just cross of the two vectors. I mean, if I can get it to work, it'll be freaking a miracle. See that little pop-up. Oh, Jesus H. Christmas. Finally. Yep, I got there. It's again not the most user-friendly thing in the world, the app. Just the physical act of typing it. And you know, the big question I'd be asking if I were a student is, well, why are you using the app? Why not use or not the app, sorry, the iPad, because that's the display that I'm using to show the notes. So it's not ideal, but it's what I'm doing. So anyway, at long last, we got 0, -1, 0, which is the coordinate set for negative j. All right. So if we were to plot that vector, you would actually see it. I just can't. I don't have it in me. Right. So if you're doing this on a desktop or a laptop or anything with a keyboard, you'll see that if you just plot vector c, it'll plot a nice vector that's orthogonal to A and B. But you could see in the diagram there that point C does look like, if it were connected to the origin, that it would be orthogonal. Right? So that's the first part. So then the question is, okay, we got K and J. That's the second piece. So I'll just kind of identify that over here, K cross J. So let me just plot J. Right, so that's another one of those right-hand rule things / put it in GeoGebra if you prefer that method. It's entirely up to you. It's just a question of, you know, where your thumb is going. This one's a little easier to see because if you place your index finger along J and your middle finger along K, trying to make it not look like I'm flipping you all off, then the thumb would be pointing out towards me. So it'd be pointing in the direction outward of the screen. So that would be the I direction. Right. So that tells me that in order to get my final answer, I'd be looking for negative J cross I. All right. So we know, based on the anti-commutative property, that we can do a switcherooski on the ordering of things, and it could make our lives a little bit more convenient sometimes. But it really is just a matter, again, of right-hand rule. If I know that negative J is going in this direction, finally I'm at a position where I can actually use that little hand diagram in a meaningful way, because it actually kind of matches up pretty good now. So negative J would be my A, I would be my B. Yeah, so you could swap it around to have the I come first and then the negative J, and that would allow you to pull an answer that we already knew from before. So I negative J, we know I cross J is equal to K. All right, but let me just show you really quickly. I could have done an anti-commutative property here and come up with negative. So you do a little switch and negate. So we could switch the order as long as we negate the result. Right. But one of the other properties that we learned about involved a coefficient multiplication by a constant, right? So I applied the first property. So if we are using properties here, I applied the first property to get us to this step here, the anti-commutative property. And then the next property would allow me to factor out that negative sign, which would make it I cross J. Do it with this color, which is that second property that we worked with in the last problem. And that we know based off of experience at this point would give us a K. Right? That's if you're using the properties. But if you're using the right-hand rule, then just based off the diagram and how it fits in the picture, it's pointing to K anyway. All right. So there's a couple of ways that you can go about doing it. It's just a question of what's more comfortable to you. And again, you know, like we don't always think, especially when you see me fumbling around with GeoGebra, you're like, well, there's no way I'm doing it that way. And then you go and sit down and take the test and you realize you don't know any other way to do it. And you're like, all right, what's that GeoGebra thing all about again? So, you know, don't dismiss it until you give it a shot, you know, because it may be easier than I'm making it out to be. All right. So that's just, you know, it's kind of sad that I have to say it that way, but I promise if you do it on a PC, you know, something with a keyboard, it's going to look a lot nicer. And in fact, later on, I'll try to make some time to just pull up a regular browser and do it that way, just so you can see. All right. So stop that recording.